Scrum is an empirical process framework for building complex products. You may ask, what's the difference between a framework and a method? Imagine someone handing over an under construction house to you with foundations and pillars built but nothing else. You have something to start with, but you can't begin living in this building without walls, rooms, etc. You have been given some guidelines to follow while building the house based on your location. You have the choice of creating beautiful rooms and fantastic living space. How beautiful the house turns out to be depends on your taste and the decisions you make. That's framework for you. Another approach would be to build a house with everything and you can just move in. You have freedom of where you place your furniture, decors, etc. But you can't change the shape and size of the rooms. That's method for you. In other words, framework is like React.js and method is like an application like LinkedIn. So Scrum is a framework which can be used by product development teams to self-organize to solve complex and adaptive problems. Basically to build complex products. Scrum has 3 roles: a product owner, 3 to 9 developers, and a Scrum Master. A product owner is like a CEO of the product. They represent the business and users to the Scrum team. They are responsible for maximizing the value of the product. A developer in Scrum is anyone who contributes to the development of the product, like a programmer, a test engineer, build and release engineer, a technical architect, or a technical writer. They are called the development team and are responsible for turning the needs of the users to a solution that fulfills their needs. Scrum Master is a systems coach. They are responsible for maximizing the effectiveness of the Scrum team by helping them improve their system, like the processes and tools they use, the way teams are structured, how they interact with their interdependencies, organizational policies, etc. All 3 of them together are called a Scrum team. The Scrum framework also has 3 artifacts, 5 events, 5 values, and a set of rules. Let's take a quick look at the Scrum framework. Any product development starts with creating a product vision. Vision is an image of the future. Product owner collaborates with the stakeholders like users, buyers, sponsors, subject matter experts, and anybody who can contribute to the vision and crafts a product vision. The product owner does a competitor analysis to create a product positioning, promotion, and pricing strategy. Then user research is done to understand how users do their job today, pains they face in doing their job, and creatively come up with a list of product features to solve their problems. This list in Scrum is called as a product backlog. Product owner then works with sponsors to understand the revenue and margin goals to prioritize the product backlog such that the features which solve the user's problem while helping the business succeed. The market research, user research, and business model design together are called as product discovery. Scrum does not prescribe how you do the discovery. Also remember, in case of complex products, you don't want to spend too much time in discovery as it's an ongoing activity. Product backlog is one of the primary Scrum artifacts. Each item in the product backlog is called a product backlog item or PBI. Each of these items could be a functional requirement, a non-functional requirement, a defect, an enhancement, change request, or anything that impacts the product goes into this product backlog. The whole Scrum team, the product owner, development team, and the Scrum Master then collaborates to add details to the top priority product backlog items. This activity is called as a product backlog refinement. The purpose of this activity is to have just enough details for PBIs for first few sprints. This is an ongoing activity which Scrum suggests should happen every sprint. Then comes the sprint. A sprint is a time box. If you go back in history, it's like how wars were time boxed from sunrise to sunset. During those ancient times, two warring groups used to fight from sunrise to sunset, then take the time off to reflect on how the progress was made and also reflect back on how they waged wars. A sprint is something like that when you are building solutions to complex problems. Sprints are short, safe-to-fail experiments to uncover problem-solution fit iteratively. The goal of the sprint is to build a product increment that will help the product teams understand if they are building the right product. Whether you call it sprint 0 or 1, Federer or Nadal, the goal of the sprint is always to build a working product. Sprint starts with planning. Sprint planning is an event where the whole Scrum team participates. And sprint planning involves two things: crafting a goal and creating a plan. The goal is the outcome that the team wants to achieve by the end of the sprint, like enable nurses to capture patient vitals in case of an hospital automation product. This is called as a sprint goal. A plan is a set of features that go into the product to achieve the goal. Those features are called product backlog items. And optionally, tasks that need to be performed to implement those features. This list of subset of PBI selected for the sprint from the product backlog and the associated tasks is called a sprint backlog. So if we were to look at a sample sprint backlog for the goal of enabling nurses to capture patient vitals, the items in sprint backlog could be capture patients' vitals data, compare with history, generate insights, print doctor's prescription form with patient vitals, etc. Scrum suggests to time box this event to a maximum of 1 day for 4-week sprint. Similarly, you may time box this event to 4 hours for a 2-week sprint, 2 hours for a 1-week sprint. The inputs to this event are the prioritized product backlog, which are refined, the team's past performance and learning from previous sprints. The output would be a sprint goal and the sprint backlog. After the sprint planning, the development starts. Scrum suggests Scrum teams define when do they consider PBIs as done. It's an agreement between product owner and the development team. The definition of done should include a list of things that the team needs to do to consider PBI as ready to be shipped. For a chair, it could consist of chair is assembled, painted, polished, tested, etc. For a software product, it could include coded, tested, integrated with existing features, and no regression, packaged, user manual updated, acceptance criteria met, etc. The teams pick up a few items from the top of the sprint backlog and collaborate to turn them into a product increment. Sprint is not a mini waterfall. So if you have picked up 5 items, it's not like you analyze all 5, code all 5, test all 5, etc. You may limit work in progress to 2 or 3 and run them through the entire definition of done before moving on to the next set of items. As and when item meets definition of done, the PO reviews the work and accepts or provides feedback. A PBI is not done unless the product owner accepts it. The review by product owner happens throughout the sprint as an ongoing activity. While building complex products, it's easy for teams to lose focus. Hence, Scrum framework suggests that teams inspect the progress towards sprint goal and adapt their plan accordingly on a daily basis. This event is called a daily Scrum. It's meant for the development team. So, how do they do it and who do they involve is at their discretion. If you complete an item or more in a day, most probably you may not need the meeting, because as and when an item is done, it presents an opportunity for inspection and adaptation. However, if an item is not done in a day, the dev team can come together for not more than 15 minutes to assess the progress and adapt accordingly. The cycle of picking product backlog items, collaborating to build a product increment, starts immediately after sprint planning and goes on until sprint review. For the convenience of discussion, let's call this as a development cycle. Whether the goal is achieved or not, all the items are done or not, the sprint time box expires. So when the time is up for sprint review, the items that are not done, even if it is half done, go back to product backlog. In case if the teams get everything done much before the development time is up, they pull more items to work on from the product backlog. The increment of the product resulting from the completion of every product backlog item is called a product increment. It's the third artifact in Scrum framework. Once the development cycle is done, the Scrum teams do the sprint review. The sprint review is a product review where the PO invites anyone who can give feedback on the product increment. They could be users, buyers, sponsors, other teams, focus groups, etc. The purpose of the sprint review is to understand if the team is building the right product and pivot based on the feedback. 3 things happen during the sprint review: setting up of stage by the product owner, demo of the product increment by the development team, forecasting by the product owner. First thing, product owner explains through the stakeholders the goal planned for the sprint, what's achieved and what's not. Second, the team demos the product increment to the stakeholders. The stakeholders review and provide feedback. The product owners make a note of the feedback and adds them to the product backlog as new items. For example, if the nurses gave you feedback that it's easier for them to write on a pad than typing on a tablet, so you get insight that text scanner or voice to text will be useful for the nurses. These go as new items to the product backlog. The third step is the product owner discusses the product backlog as it stands today and the priorities that they have set. Scrum suggests time boxing this event to a maximum of 4 hours for 4-week sprints. Similarly, you may time box to 2 hours for a 2-week sprint and 1 hour for 1-week sprint, and so on. As you notice, the input to this event is a product increment and output is updated product backlog. The last event in the sprint is sprint retrospective. The purpose of this event is to reflect on how the team worked together to build the product increment and identify improvement areas. It's not just process review, but the whole system review. By system, I mean the processes, the structures, the organization, policies, tools used, etc. Product's quality and the team's capability are directly proportional to the system. Hence, this is a formal opportunity to reflect on how did the sprint go and look forward on what needs to be achieved and identify improvement areas that can be carried on to the next sprint. For example, you may identify that user experience and UI were inconsistent for the features done. So you may decide as a team to create design guidelines to follow from the next sprint onwards. Well, that completes one sprint. Parallel to the sprint, the product owner continues the discovery. The whole Scrum team also takes time off to do the backlog refinement to keep the backlog ready for next few sprints. Overall, Scrum has 3 roles: a product owner, the development team, and a Scrum master. 3 artifacts: product backlog, sprint backlog, and product increment. 5 events: the sprint planning, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. An agreement, definition of done, a set of time boxing rules, and 5 values: focus, openness, courage, commitment, and respect. This was an overview. Let's deep dive into details in the upcoming modules.